Hello and welcome to episode 6, Rage Against the Stupidity. Picture the scene if you will. It is 2009, December is on the horizon, and across the country millions are becoming increasingly skilled at deftly changing the topic whenever Saturday night television is mentioned. There is dissent in the rank as always, but this year is different. There is rumour of a rebellion, an organised campaign against the encroached leaders. Dare we hope, dare we dream that this could all change. While we do hope, and we do dream, and as the numbers grow, we even dare to believe. I am talking, of course, about the 2009 campaign to remove X Factor as the Christmas number one. Okay, all of that was just a bit of silliness, but essentially this was something I was fairly active in within the Facebook group, and it is something I believed quite strongly in because there was a big sense of entitlement from anyone connected with X Factor and anyone who watched X Factor. The sense of entitlement was that they would get the Christmas number one. And a lot of people in the country disliked that, not only because that's not how the music charts are supposed to work, but also because the Christmas number one from X Factor was, without exception, every year, plain and boring and manufactured. So it is something which, when we saw, a lot of people decided to take part in. And that meant that the group grew, it eventually drew other media attention, and it eventually drew reactions from the X Factor establishment itself. I will say right at the beginning that there were some members of the group who were just in it to hate, and they were just in it to troll, and I discouraged that any place I saw it, and I apologised for it any place I saw it, because that wasn't what the group was about. The group was about good music, and it was about removing the expectation that Simon Cowell would have another hit on his hands. And that is essentially what we achieved. But we had to fight very hard to get it. The reaction from Simon Cowell and the rest of the world at first was dismissive. As we grew, we actually started getting some more legitimate reactions from them. And in fact, at one point, Simon Cowell reacted in ways which I, for one, was not happy about. He talked about how we were bullying Joe McAldry. He talked about how we were just out to hate and how we wanted to remove this thing from him. This entitlement that they had about winning meant that by organising a movement against X Factor, we were set out to be the bad guys, and we were taking something away from him, something he was entitled to. And that's not it at all. And I personally resent the implication that the group was in any way bullying, because I was bullied myself all throughout school. It is something I am very against, and to have that accusation made against the group felt like it was made against me personally, because the group was made of individual members. It wasn't some international corporation. The comments that Cowell made, if made against an international corporation, would have meant much less, but he wasn't talking to a corporation, he was talking to people, and he never understood what exactly he was speaking out against. And the whole motivation, the group wanted decent music and Cowell wanted money. Cowell took the stance that we were working against the interests of whoever won. We were working against music, whereas I know for a fact that Joe McCowdery only stayed with Psycho, which is Simon Cowell's record label. He only stayed with them for 1 year, which is all that Psycho is obliged to give him after he won. And I knew that would happen. I knew that it really is all about the money for Simon Cowell, and that in fact Simon Cowell gets paid twice, once by ITV and once through whatever money is made for Psycho. And I actually wanted Joe McCowdery to come in number 2 at the X Factor final, because then he would have a record label who actually cared about what he stood for rather than being obliged to take him on. So the other thing is, a lot of people, again talking about the entitlement, they thought that any movement wasn't a good thing just because we won X Factor. And to this, I just want to look at the conversion rate of sales. The Rage Against the Machine Facebook group had probably a bit more than 2 million members by the end of the campaign, and we got 500,000 sales out of that. And that's a 25% roughly conversion rate of audience to sales. X Factor had 20 million viewers for the final, and it had a steady 20 million viewers for most episodes during the season. And it sold 450,000 singles, which is less than a 2.5% conversion rate. It is 10 times less than what the Facebook group achieved. And if we scaled it up, if the Facebook group had 20 million members, which may or may not have ever been possible, that would have converted, if we extrapolate it, to 5 million sales. And if you compare 5 million sales against 450,000, you kind of see that there's a clear winner here. And even if you don't do that, even if you go for the original sales, we are still a clear winner. 50,000 is not a small number, and they are all legitimate. The organisers of the top 40 have methods in place to ensure that single people don't buy hundreds of records and have it all counted. There is, I believe, a limit of 3 sales per person, per shop. And that is one of the reasons why I'm making this video, because a lot of people at the beginning didn't get what the group was about, and it seems that some people still don't get what the group is about. And I saw an article, in fact I saw it yesterday, which was written after the most recent Christmas #1 race, and the author obviously doesn't get the fact that X Factor is still not entitled to win. And that's why I'm making this video. I wanted to pick apart some of the things he says in the blog post, and just use this as my rebuttal as to why I think that it is misinformed. And the only reason really I'm doing this, usually I would ignore such a thing, but it was posted on about.com, which I actually hold in high regard. They are usually very correct, and this blatant opinion piece, which is just wrong on so many levels is something which I never expected to find there. So I'm just going to take a few quotes out of the article. I will link to it in the description so you can read it in its full, and I'm going to just go over it and say why I don't think this article should have ever been published in its current form. So the first thing is, normal rules of engagement do not apply. Quote from the article, and it was talking about how the X Factor single this year was beaten by a charity single from the Justice Collective. And it very strongly suggests that he still has this sense of entitlement that X Factor should win. Normal rules of engagement in this context meaning that X Factor just wins and no one challenges him. The next quote is, the number one single ends up being a track released for the explicit purpose of making the Christmas chart and existing for that sole purpose alone. Now forgive me, that's also the exact purpose of the X Factor release. The only difference here is that the Justice Collective released a charity single. They released it around Christmas because lots of people buy singles around Christmas and it puts a bit of excitement into the charts at this time. Moving on, the next quote is, James Arthur's Impossible is beaten at the death by, well, one of the most appallingly conceived charity singles ever. This is absolute complete opinion. In my opinion, the charity single is much better in tone, purpose, general interest, and in fact, James Arthur's song is just very, very banal to me. So, I don't get what he's trying to say there, but he definitely should have prefaced it with, in my opinion. He goes on to say that the charity single is a statement of intent rather than appreciation of the music, and considering the X Factor singles are often aimed at the biggest mass appeal rather than actually any meaning, I think that if the Justice Collective make a statement of intent of raising money through charity, I would much rather support that. The next quote is, commiserations then to James Arthur, who can at least claim a moral victory. The number one is a public vote. People vote with their money, they vote with their feet. Whatever reasons people had for buying the charity single, they bought it. And there were more of them buying the charity single than buying James Arthur's single. There is no moral victory here, there is no scandal, there is no cheating. The public voted and X Factor lost. And the article then goes on to trash Alex Day and his YouTube followers, and that just shows how out of touch this author is. YouTube followers are just as valid as anyone else who buys music. If someone releases something on YouTube and says to his followers, hey, if you like this, go buy it, we may get number one, and they go and buy it, and he gets number one, that's a valid thing to do. It's just like someone releasing something and putting a TV advert out saying, hey, go buy my stuff. And I was actually very surprised because he didn't start talking about Psy and Gangnam Style, who is also currently in the charts through a massive YouTube campaign. In my opinion, the whole article shows the opinionated writings of an opinionated writer. It's not at all of the quality that is usually displayed by articles and information on about.com. And so this is my rebuttal. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I would love to hear everyone's opinions, so leave a comment, leave a video response, and just start a discussion. I love discussions. Goodbye, Internet.